In a quiet green valley where the grass grew thick and soft like blankets, the sky was always the color of buttermilk in the morning and lavender tea at night. Here, in the heart of the Cloverlight meadow, lived a little cow named Tilly. Tilly was not just any cow. She was a cuddly, gentle, moon-dappled calf with big sleepy eyes and a nose as soft as a marshmallow. Tilly loved the clover that grew in her meadow. It wasn't ordinary clover. It glowed faintly in the evenings with a silvery shimmer, like tiny stars had curled up in the leaves. That's why the meadow was called Cloverlight. When the sun dipped behind the hills, the clover began to twinkle, and the whole field looked like it was breathing in dreams. Every evening, just as the sky turned dusky and the trees yawned their leafy branches, Tilly would wander out into the glowing grass. Her hooves made the gentlest pat-pat sounds. The other cows were already settling in, their warm brown shapes nestled in little circles, breathing slow and quiet. But Tilly liked to walk a little before she cuddled down. She liked to listen to the soft sounds of the world. Tonight, the breeze was humming a lullaby through the cattails. A family of crickets sang in rhythm. The moon was just beginning to rise, round and golden, like a sleepy cookie. Everything was soft. Everything was calm. Tilly took a deep breath. The clover smelled sweet and cool, like mint and honey. She nibbled a little. It tasted like bedtime stories. She closed her eyes and chewed slowly, listening to the hush around her. Not far away, a little owl named Pip blinked from the low branch of a willow tree. Pip was very small and very round, with feathers that looked like they had been brushed with powdered sugar. Pip didn't hoot loudly like other owls. He whispered. He liked to watch the animals in Cloverlight fall asleep. Tilly looked up at him and gave a soft moo, the kind that meant hello, friend. Pip fluttered down and landed gently on a mossy rock beside her. He tilted his head and blinked again, then gave a sleepy little chirrup. Together, they watched the stars begin to peek out, one by one, like shy fireflies. There was something special about tonight. Tilly could feel it in her ears, in her tail, in her heart. The air had a sparkle to it, like the whole world was about to tell a secret. Then she noticed something, just a tiny flicker, a little shimmer between the clovers. It wasn't a firefly. It wasn't a star. It was something else. Curious, Tilly took a few slow steps closer. The flicker fluttered, like a feather, like a dream. It was a petal, a glowing, floating petal, drifting softly just above the ground. But where had it come from? There were no flowers in bloom, not at night, and this one was glowing just faintly like moonlight caught in silk. Tilly watched as the petal drifted toward the old stone well at the edge of the meadow. The well hadn't been used in a long time. Moss had curled around its stones, and morning glories had claimed its rim. But tonight the well looked different. It looked awake. Pip fluffed his feathers and gave a quiet chirp. He had seen strange things before. Once, a cloud shaped like a ferry boat, and once, a rainbow that whispered. But this was different. This felt like a beginning. Tilly stepped closer. The petal floated down into the well, slow as a sigh, and when it did, the well gave the softest glow, just a hum, really, a warm, golden hum. like it was remembering something. Tilly tilted her head. She didn't feel scared. She felt curious, calm. Like when you're just about to hear a lovely story. She looked back at the other cows. They were still curled up, breathing deep, dreaming their cow dreams. She looked at Pip. He gave a slow blink, which meant yes, let's see. So Tilly leaned her nose gently over the well's edge. There was no bucket, no rope, just stillness. But instead of darkness, she saw light. Glimmering, golden light, swirling deep down where water should be. It looked like a pool of soft stars. Then, just as slowly as it had begun, the light dimmed. The petal was gone. The glow was gone. But the feeling stayed, a quiet tickle in her chest, a secret waiting to be found. Tilly turned and walked back to the middle of the meadow, where the clover glowed beneath her hooves. She curled up in a little nest of softness, her legs tucked beneath her, her tail wrapping around like a ribbon. Pip fluttered to a branch above her and settled his feathers. The moon rose a little higher, casting silver dust across the meadow. Everything was still. Everything was warm. Tilly closed her eyes and thought about the petal, about the well, about the light that felt like a dream. She didn't know what it meant yet. But she had a feeling that soon something wonderful would begin. And with that thought tucked gently in her heart, she drifted off, wrapped in the cloverlight, with the stars above and the soft earth below. The wind sighed through the grass, and the night held her close. The next morning arrived not with a bang, but with a whisper. In Cloverlight Meadow, the sun didn't rise quickly. Instead, it stretched slowly over the hills, pouring soft golden light like warm milk across the grass. Everything glistened with dew, and the clover leaves sparkled as if they had saved a little moonlight just for the morning. Tilly stirred in her cozy nest of green. Her ears gave a tiny wiggle, and she opened one eye, then the other. The world was quiet and gentle. A breeze brushed her cheek like a kiss. She yawned a big, slow cow yawn and blinked up at the sky, which was now the color of chamomile tea. Today felt different. It wasn't just the memory of the glowing petal or the golden light in the well. It was something in the air. A hush, like the meadow was waiting. Tilly stretched her legs with soft little clicks in the grass and stood up slowly, letting the sunlight warm her back. She looked to the willow tree. Pip was still snoozing, tucked into a fluff of feathers between two branches. He always liked to stay up late and sleep in. Tilly gave a gentle moo to the morning, a sound that meant I'm ready for the day. She wandered to the well again, her hooves brushing through the clover. The stones were cool with dew, and the moss was like a soft green scarf around the rim. She peeked over the edge. No glow today, just stillness. But it was a kind stillness, like someone was thinking very deeply, very quietly. Tilly leaned her nose closer. The scent of the moss, the stone, and something else, something sweet, rose up to greet her. It smelled like sugar clouds and sleepy flowers. She blinked slowly, then she heard it. A hum. Very faint, very soft, like a lullaby wrapped in a whisper. It came from below, deep inside the well. Tilly tilted her head. Then, as she listened, the hum changed. It became a voice. Not a voice with words, but a voice with feelings. It said, "Come and see." Tilly took a step back. She didn't feel afraid. She felt curious. The same feeling as last night. Like when you're about to open the first page of a storybook. She looked around the meadow. The other cows were grazing peacefully, their tails swishing slowly. The sky was clear and the breeze was warm. Pip fluttered down beside her, still a little sleepy, and blinked up at her. He gave a soft hoot that meant, "Is it time for something special?" Tilly gave a tiny nod. Then something shimmered near her hoof. It was another petal, just like the one from last night, glowing faintly, drifting gently, like a dream that had drifted out of the sky and landed just for her. She watched as it floated upwards and spiraled slowly into the air. This time, it didn't go to the well. It drifted toward the far side of the meadow, where the clover grew tallest and the hills rolled like green waves into the distance. Tilly followed. Each step was soft and slow. The petal moved just ahead, never too fast, never too far. Pip flew low beside her, his wings making a hush-hush sound in the air. They passed under the willow tree, past the sleepy cows, and into the tall clover. Here the clover reached Tilly's shoulders and tickled her belly as she walked. The sun made everything sparkle, and the air was full of the scent of honey and mint. Then the petal stopped. It hovered in the air above a small circle of stones. Tilly had never seen them before. They were smooth and round, each one the size of a loaf of bread. They made a ring in the grass, perfectly even, like they had been placed there long ago by someone who loved quiet things. In the very center of the ring, something poked out of the ground. It was small and wooden, with tiny carvings all along its sides. Tilly stepped closer. The petal floated down and gently touched the wooden thing. It was a box. Pip landed on one of the stones and tilted his head. He gave a soft peep that meant, "What do you think it is?" Tilly leaned down and nudged the box with her nose. It didn't move much. It was nestled deep in the soft earth. But as she touched it, the carvings began to glow, not brightly, just a soft, sleepy glow, pale gold, like sunlight through closed eyelids. Then, with a soft click, the box opened. Inside was a little bundle of cloth, tied with a ribbon made of clover stems. Tilly gently nosed it open. Inside the bundle, tucked like a treasure, was a map. Not a map like the ones in books. This was a dream map, the kind that shows you not where things are, but where they might be if you believe they could exist. The lines shimmered and curled, and the places had names like Starberry Hollow, Bubbleglow Lake, and the Wishing Tree. There were no roads, only soft trails made of sparkles and dotted lines that fluttered when you looked at them. At the very bottom of the map, written in letters that looked like tiny vines, were the words, "Follow the petals, listen to the light. The Cloverlight path will guide you right." Tilly stared at the map, her heart feeling full of something warm and fluttery. She looked at Pip, who gave a little bounce that meant, oh yes, let's go." She didn't know exactly where the path might lead, but she felt, deep in her gentle cow heart, that it would be a journey full of kindness, softness, and wonder. Tilly carefully folded the map and tucked it back into the cloth. She placed it on her back, balanced just so, where it could rest safely as she walked. She turned back to the meadow, her tail flicking slowly in the breeze. The petal floated beside her, and the hum returned. Soft, guiding, full of hush and glow, she was ready. But not all at once. First, she would rest a little more. She curled back into the clover, the map warm against her back, and Pip nestled beside her. The petal hovered above them, a tiny light rocking gently in the breeze. And the map, though silent, seemed to whisper dreams of places far away and close to the heart. Tilly breathed slow. The sun rose higher, the meadow stayed still, and everything waited, calm and quiet, for the journey to begin. The next time Tilly opened her eyes, the sun had begun its slow stroll toward the hills again, painting the sky with soft peach and lavender. The clover glowed in the quiet light, and the breeze carried the scent of sleepy blossoms and warm earth. Everything was hushed and golden. She stretched her legs carefully so she wouldn't disturb the little bundle on her back. The map was still there, tucked snug and safe. Pip was perched on a nearby stone, preening his feathers with slow, drowsy pecks. The petal floated nearby, its glow a little brighter now in the late afternoon light. It twirled gently as if it too had just woken from a nap. Tilly gave a soft moo, the kind that meant I'm ready now. The petal bobbed once in the air, then began to drift again, this time toward the edge of the meadow, where a little gate stood between two mossy fence posts. It was a gate no one used much anymore. The cows didn't go beyond it, and the breeze always seemed to sing a slightly different tune there. But today the gate was open. Just a little, just enough. Tilly walked slowly toward it, her hooves making the tiniest sounds in the grass. Pip fluttered beside her, his wings hush-hushing through the air. The map stayed steady on her back, glowing faintly even without the sun. As she stepped through the gate, the world seemed to sigh. Not a sad sigh, just a long, gentle breath, like it had been waiting for someone to notice its secrets. Beyond the gate was a path, not made of dirt or stone, but of soft, springy moss. It was like walking on a blanket made of clouds and leaves. On either side of the path, tall grasses swayed like dancers, and little lights blinked lazily among the blades. They weren't fireflies, not exactly. They were slower, softer, and they glowed in colors Tilly had never seen before. Colors that felt like lullabies. The petal floated ahead, leading her down the mossy trail. The trees leaned in gently, their branches whispering to one another in leafy voices. Somewhere nearby, a brook giggled over smooth stones, and the air smelled of sleepy strawberries and rain that hadn't arrived yet. Tilly walked in slow, peaceful steps. Pip perched on her back, just beside the map, humming a tiny tune that only owls know. As they followed the path, they began to notice little signs. Not signs with words, but signs made of nature. 3 stones stacked in a careful pile, a swirl of blue feathers nestled in the crook of a tree, a ring of mushrooms that seemed to hum very softly when Tilly passed. She followed them all, her heart calm and curious. Then, just beyond a bend in the mossy path, they saw something new. It was a clearing, round and quiet, where the sunlight dripped through the trees like golden honey. In the center stood a toll, twisty tree with bark like woven ribbons. Its leaves were shaped like stars, and they glowed faintly even in the daylight. Beneath it sat a creature. It was small, soft, and round, with fur the color of warm oatmeal and ears that flopped gently every time the breeze passed. It looked like a bunny, but also a little bit like a pillow. Its eyes were closed, and it was humming a song to itself, a song with no words. The creature opened one eye when Tilly stepped into the clearing. Then it opened the other and smiled the gentlest smile Tilly had ever seen. The petal floated down and settled on the bunny pillow's paw. The creature gave a little nod. Tilly stepped closer and gave a soft moo that meant, "Hello, my name is Tilly." The creature blinked slowly and replied with a sound like a whisper wrapped in a giggle. It meant, "I am called Nib." Nib stood and gave a sleepy stretch, then reached behind the twisty tree and pulled out a little basket made of moss and petals. Inside were tiny glowing berries that looked like they had been kissed by starlight. Nib offered one to Tilly. She took it gently in her mouth. It tasted like dreams about flying and the feeling you get when someone tucks you in just right. Pip tried one too and let out a tiny chirrup of delight. Nib smiled again and pointed to the map on Tilly's back. He gave a knowing nod, then pointed to the tree. At its base was a little door, round, wooden, and carved with curious shapes. Tilly stepped close. The door swung open with a soft creak. Inside was a shelf, and on the shelf was a book. The book was bound in velvet with a cover that shimmered like a puddle of stars. On the front were the words, written in curling, vinyl-like letters, "The Guide of Gentle Places." Tilly looked at Nib, who nodded once more and gave a happy flop of his ears. Pip fluttered down and landed on the book. He pecked at the corner, careful and slow, as if to say, "Let's take this with us." Tilly tucked the book carefully beside the map. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for just the right moment to be carried. Nib gave a little bow, then nestled back into the moss at the base of the tree. He closed his eyes and began humming again, the same wordless tune as before. The petal rose once more, glowing softly, and began to drift away from the clearing. Tilly followed, back onto the mossy path, with the book and the map riding gently on her back, and Pip beside her, his feathers fluffed in the golden light. The sun was lower now, brushing the tops of the trees with sleepy orange light. The breeze was cooler, and the lights in the grass began to glow a little brighter. Tilly's steps were slow, her heart full of softness. The path ahead curled gently like a ribbon in the wind, and somewhere in the distance a new dream was waiting. Evening was beginning to settle like a blanket across the land, tucking in every tree, every hill, and every soft blade of grass. The sky above turned a gentle lavender blue, and the first stars blinked open, one by one, like tiny eyes fluttering awake in the quiet sky. Tilly walked slowly, her hooves making the faintest sound on the mossy trail. Pip nestled on her back, right beside the velvet-covered book and the curled-up map, both resting as gently as dreams themselves. The glowing petal still floated ahead, leading them with its soft, steady light. The path curved gently now, winding through trees that whispered secrets only the wind could hear. Their leaves rustled like lullabies, and every now and then a soft puff of flower-scented breeze would drift past, making Tilly's ears twitch in the nicest way. Soon they came to a little wooden bridge. It arched over a stream that sparkled with tiny lights, like the water had swallowed the stars and was now giggling them back out. The bridge was made of knotted branches and flower vines, and it creaked just a little when Tilly stepped onto it, like it was saying, "Hello, welcome, go softly." Below, the water burbled and bubbled, its song full of sleepy gurgles and cozy splashes. Tilly paused in the middle of the bridge and looked down. The water was so clear she could see pebbles on the bottom, smooth and round, and little fish that glowed like lanterns drifting between them. Pip fluttered up to the curved railing and looked too. He gave a low, thoughtful hoot that meant, "It feels like the water is dreaming." And it did. The stream didn't rush or race. It moved slowly, peacefully, like it had all the time in the world. On the other side of the bridge, the petal paused. It hovered near a stump covered in soft moss and tiny mushrooms with glowing caps. Next to the stump stood a sign, but instead of letters, it had carvings, shapes of clouds and stars, and what looked like a little cow curled up in clover. Tilly stepped down from the bridge and looked closer. The sign hummed gently when she touched it with her nose. And then, just behind the stump, the grass dipped down into a little hollow. A sweet, gentle place. The hollow was lined with bluebells and soft ferns, and in the center was a round patch of clover that shimmered silver in the fading light. At the very center of the clover was a stone, smooth and warm-looking, shaped like a heart. The petal floated down and rested on the heartstone. Tilly stepped closer. This place felt special, like a memory wrapped in a blanket. She curled herself down in the center of the clover, resting her legs beneath her and tucking her tail around. Pip nestled beside her, his feathers rustling as he settled in. The heartstone was warm against her side, and the clover felt cooler now, like evening had kissed it gently. Tilly closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the hush of the hollow. Then she felt it, a soft vibration under her belly, like the earth was humming a song just for her. It was steady and low, like a lullaby played on a big, kind drum. The book on her back gave a little shimmer. Pip opened one eye, just a sliver, and tilted his head. The book was glowing again, and the carvings on the cover shifted softly, like they were stretching after a nap. Tilly nudged it gently with her nose. The book opened, not with a snap or a flutter, but with a sigh, like it had been waiting for just the right moment. The pages inside were filled with drawings, soft, swirling sketches of places that didn't look quite real, but didn't look pretend either. There were floating meadows, and tree houses made of clouds, and ponds that sang when the wind passed by. Then the pages turned on their own. 1, 2, 3, until they stopped on a picture that made Tilly's heart feel warm and fizzy. It was a picture of a cow that looked just like her, curled up in a glowing patch of clover, with a glowing petal floating above and a tiny awl on her back. And beneath the picture were more of those curling vinyl letters. The book didn't speak out loud, but Tilly could feel the words, like a story being whispered into her heart. This is the beginning of the Cloverlight path. Soft steps, glowing signs, and hearts that listen. Follow the hush, follow the dream. Where kindness leads, the path will bloom. Tilly blinked slowly. The words wrapped around her like a blanket made of stars. The petal rose again, just a little, and hovered nearby as if to say, "There's more, whenever you're ready, but not yet." Not tonight. Tilly yawned a slow, cozy yawn. The kind that makes your ears wiggle and your eyes blink heavier and heavier. Pip snuggled closer, his feathers fluffed up like a puffball. The hearthstone hummed beneath her, and the clover glowed in a soft, sleepy rhythm. The book closed itself with a gentle hush and rested beside her as if it too needed a nap before the next page. The stars above twinkled a little brighter now, and the moon peeked out from behind a cloud, brushing the world with silver. Tilly breathed in and out, in and out. The hollow was quiet except for the gentle sounds of the stream, the breeze in the trees, and the little owl's soft snores. Everything was still. Everything was safe, and in the Cloverlight, wrapped in dreams and whispers, Tilly drifted into the deepest, coziest sleep. Morning came slowly, tiptoeing into the hollow like a shy little friend. The sunlight didn't burst or blaze. It yawned and stretched, spilling soft golden light across the clover and kissing the tops of the bluebells. The hearthstone beneath Tilly gave off the tiniest warmth, like it had been holding a dream all night just for her. Tilly blinked her sleepy eyes open, one at a time. Her lashes fluttered like butterfly wings as she looked around. Everything was still calm, still gentle, still full of that soft, glowing hush that made the world feel safe and kind. Pip was still snuggled up against her, his tiny chest rising and falling in slow, puffy breaths. His wing twitched once, like he was chasing something sweet in his dreams. Tilly didn't move right away. She liked the way her body felt heavy and relaxed, like the clover had been holding her all night. Her ears twitched at the sound of a distant bird singing a lazy good morning song. The notes drifted on the breeze like petals falling through the sky. Then, ever so slowly, Tilly rolled to her feet. She stood with a soft creak of her joints and gave a little stretch, arching her back and curling her tail. A long, deep moo rolled from her chest, the kind that said moom, that was a lovely sleep. Pip stirred and opened one eye, then the other. He gave a tiny hoot and blinked up at her, still wrapped in a feather fluff of snooze. The glowing petal was waiting. It hovered just above the hearthstone, twirling gently in the morning breeze, its light dim in the sun, but still there, still magical. Tilly nudged Pip gently with her nose, and he fluttered up, shaking out his wings with a soft flit flit flit. He landed on her back, settling beside the velvet book and the dream app, both of which had stayed right where they belonged all night. The petal floated away from the hollow, passing over the little wooden bridge, and back onto the mossy path. Tilly followed, her hooves pressing into the springy green softness. The moss seemed to hum beneath her steps, like it remembered her from before. The trees arched overhead, their branches forming quiet arches that swayed and shimmered with sunlight. Every so often, a leaf would drift down, spinning slowly through the air before landing with a whisper near her hooves. The air was a little cooler today, with the scent of lavender and something else, something fizzy and sweet, like the bubbles in a tumbler of cloud soda. As they walked, the path began to change. The moss gave way to a carpet of tiny white flowers, soft as feathers and shaped like stars. They glowed faintly even in the daylight, and they tickled Tilly's legs as she stepped through them. Then, up ahead, the petal paused. It hovered above a low hill, and beyond the hill, Tilly could see something shimmering. She walked slowly up the slope. Pip perched steady on her back, both of them holding their breath just a little. At the top of the hill, Tilly stopped and stared. Below them was a gentle valley, filled with the most beautiful sight she had ever seen. Bubbles everywhere. They floated through the air, quiet and slow, as if they were dancing to a bedtime tune played by the breeze. Some were small as dewdrops. Others were big enough to sit on, or even nap on. They shimmered in colors that changed with every blink: blue-pink, pearly green, soft gold, and silver like moonlight. At the center of the valley was a round, still pond, its surface so smooth it looked like a mirror. The bubbles rose up from the water, one by one, as if the pond were sighing them into the sky. The petal drifted down toward the pond. Tilly followed, her eyes wide with wonder. The closer she got, the more she could hear it. The soft pop-pop-pop of bubbles gently bursting in the air, and the quietest hum, like the pond, was singing a lullaby to the sky. Pip gave a low chirrup that meant, "This is a place full of dreams." Near the edge of the pond, the grass turned into something even softer. A plush, velvety moss that cradled every hoof step. Tilly stopped and stared into the water. Her reflection looked back at her, calm and curious, with Pip perched on her back and the petal glowing nearby. Then, with a soft ploop, a bubble rose from the pond and hovered in front of her. It shimmered gently, and inside it, Tilly saw a picture, herself walking through a field of flowers that sang when the wind passed through them. The bubble drifted closer, and as it touched her nose, it popped with a sound no louder than a giggle. Another bubble rose. This one showed her napping inside a treehouse made of clouds, with Pip swinging in a tiny hammock made of spider silk and moss. Pop! A third bubble floated by, and this one showed her dancing slowly in a ring of starlight with other cows, their hooves making music on the soft grass. Pop! Each bubble told a little story, not of the past, not of the present, but of maybes, of yet-hopes, of could-happens and gentle wishes. Tilly breathed in the soft, bubble-sweet air and felt her heart grow even warmer. She stepped closer to the pond and gently dipped her nose into the water. It was cool and tingly, like snowflakes that had learned how to sing. The glowing petal floated down again and touched the surface of the pond. When it did, a ring of bubbles rose up and circled Tilly, spinning slowly, softly like a carousel made of dreams. Pip let out a tiny hoot of joy and fluttered into the air, catching a ride on one of the bigger bubbles. It held him gently, carrying him in slow circles above the pond. Tilly watched, her tail swaying with quiet delight. Then, with a soft pull, one bubble, just big enough, drifted toward her. It touched her gently, and then, without a sound, lifted her off the ground. Up, up, up. Tilly's hooves left the moss. The pond grew smaller below. The valley stretched out like a dream carpet beneath her. She floated beside Pip, both of them giggling without making a sound, cradled by the hush of the bubble breeze. The glowing petal twirled around them, a soft little star in the sky, and for a long, quiet while they drifted. No hurry, no worry, just the soft sound of the world breathing with them. The bubble carried Tilly higher, but never too high, just enough to see the curve of the hills and the shimmer of the sky. The air up here felt soft, like marshmallows melting in the sun, and it smelled of sugar flowers and morning mist. Pip drifted nearby on his own gentle bubble, wings tucked in, eyes blinking slowly. His feathers fluttered in the breeze that whispered like a lullaby through the sky. Every now and then, one of his tiny hoots floated across the air, light as a feather's sigh. Tilly looked out beyond the bubble's edge. The Cloverlight meadow was far behind now, a patch of glowing green tucked between sleepy trees. The mossy path was a ribbon of soft memory, and the pond below, with its singing bubbles, grew smaller and smaller as they floated along. The glowing petal led the way, bobbing in the air like it had always known how to fly. It danced in little circles sometimes, then floated forward again, always steady, always sure. Tilly didn't worry. The bubble felt like a cradle, and the wind was kind. Every so often, a group of tiny birds would pass by, flying in slow spirals, their wings making the softest shush, shush sound. They smiled with their eyes as they went, and one even waved a tiny wing before gliding off into the glowing sky. As they floated along, the sky began to change. It wasn't just blue anymore. It was the color of dreams, soft pinks, pale golds, and gentle lavender, all melting together like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Little sparkles floated in the air, not quite stars, not quite fireflies. They drifted around the bubble like sleepy dancers. Pip gave a tiny hop and landed beside Tilly. He blinked once, then twice, then tilted his head toward the horizon. There, rising up through the misty clouds, was something new. A tall, twisting tower, not made of stone, but of light and vines and clouds. It spiraled upward like a strand of music, and at the very top was a soft, glowing nest. As the bubble floated closer, Tilly could see that the tower was not just a building, it was alive. Flowers bloomed from its sides, their petals opening slowly as if stretching after a long nap. Vines curled and uncurled like sleepy fingers, and soft lights pulsed gently with every breeze. The bubble slowed. Then, with a gentle sigh, it lowered Tilly onto a wide, petal-covered ledge near the base of the tower. Pip's bubble followed, setting him down beside her with a soft pop. The glowing petal drifted down and settled on a smooth stone nestled into the flowers. Tilly stepped off the bubble carefully, her hooves making no sound at all. The ledge was covered in wildflowers that glowed like tiny lanterns. Everything smelled sweet and sleepy, like warm milk and vanilla clouds. In front of her stood an arched doorway made entirely of woven vines and blossoms. It opened slowly as she approached, without a sound, like it had been waiting for her. Inside, the light was soft and golden. The air shimmered gently, and everything felt wrapped in hush. The room beyond the doorway was round and cozy, with walls made of woven petals and silk threads. There were cushions shaped like moons and stars, and in the center of it all sat a creature, unlike any Tilly had ever seen. It had the body of a bear, but it was small and soft, like a teddy left too long in the sun. Its fur was a swirl of pastel colors, and its eyes twinkled like tiny suns. It sat in the middle of the room, humming to itself and brushing a strand of silver thread through the air. Tilly took a gentle step forward. Pip fluttered to her back and watched with wide, round eyes. The creature looked up and smiled, not a big smile, just a small, knowing one. Tilly gave a soft moo that meant hello. I think I'm supposed to be here. The creature nodded. It didn't speak with words. It spoke with feeling. Welcome, little wanderer. You have found the Tower of Tumbleshine. Tumbleshine, Tilly thought, letting the name settle like a feather in her mind. The creature stood and padded over, each step quieter than a whisper. It touched the book on Tilly's back gently, then tapped the map, which gave a little shimmer. You walk the Cloverlight path, the creature said, not out loud, but inside her heart. The path of soft dreams, gentle hearts, and quiet wonder. Tilly nodded slowly. Tumbleshine turned and reached into a basket made of cloud silk. From it, the creature pulled a ribbon, long and glowing with color, that changed each time it moved. It was cool to the touch and hummed gently like wind through chimes. This, Tumbleshine said, is a thread of the sky's own dream. It will help you find the places that glow only when kindness walks by. Tilly bowed her head, and the ribbon was tied gently around her neck. It fluttered like a leaf in the breeze, then settled, warm and weightless. Pip gave a soft hoot of approval. Then Tumbleshine walked to the back of the room and opened another vine-woven door. Beyond it stretched a little balcony, and from the balcony, a new path began, this one made of floating lily pads that bobbed gently in the air, forming a trail across the sky. Tilly stepped out beside Tumbleshine and looked at the trail of pads. They stretched far into the distance, disappearing into a soft mist that glowed like candlelight. The glowing petal floated to the first pad and hovered there, waiting. Tumbleshine gave a final nod. Your heart is ready. The path listens to hearts just like yours. Tilly turned, gave a soft moo of thanks, and stepped gently onto the first lily pad. It held her like a cloud. Pip landed beside her. The ribbon around her neck shimmered softly, and as the lily pads began to carry them away, bobbing ever so gently, like tiny boats on a dream sea, Tilly looked back one last time. Tumbleshine stood in the doorway, the silver thread still in one paw, waving gently, like a whisper that never quite ends. The tower faded behind them as the lily pads floated forward, carrying them toward whatever soft wonder came next. And in the hush of the sky, the ribbon shimmered. The petal glowed, and the journey continued. The lily pads drifted quietly through the sky, each one bobbing with the gentlest bounce, like a lullaby you could ride. Tilly stepped from one to the next, slow and careful, the ribbon around her neck fluttering in the breeze like a sleepy sigh. Pip perched happily on her back, his wings tucked in, his round eyes blinking slow and content. Above them, The clouds were soft and golden, floating like giant pillows. Some were shaped like animals, fluffy sheep, a dozing fox, a bear curled up for a nap. Others looked like teacups or slippers or mittens, and Tilly smiled as she passed beneath them, feeling as though the sky had dressed itself just for dreaming. Each lily pad gave off a quiet hum as her hooves touched it, as if it was happy to be part of her journey. The glowing petal floated ahead, always just a little out front, swirling and spinning in slow, sleepy circles. Soon, the air began to change. It grew even softer, warmer, sweeter, like the moment right before someone tucks you in at night. The lily pads began to drift downward, floating gently toward a new place below. Tilly looked down. What she saw made her heart feel fizzy and fluttery, like warm milk with bubbles made of stars. There was a village, a floating village. Each house sat on its own little puff of cloud, gently rocking in the sky. The rooftops were shaped like cupcakes and teapots and tulip petals. Chimneys puffed out swirls of lavender-scented steam, and little flags waved slowly in the breeze. The whole village glowed with that same soft shimmer as Cloverlight, the kind that made your eyelids a little heavier just by looking at it. As Tilly floated closer, she could see tiny creatures bustling about, not rushing, not hurrying, just moving in that same slow, cozy way that everything in this world seemed to prefer. They were small and round and fluffy. Some were rabbits with glasses, others looked like sleepy kittens wearing scarves, and a few were tiny foxes with teacups balanced on their heads. The lily pad landed on a wide platform made of soft woven reeds and cloud threads. Tilly stepped off carefully, her hooves making no sound at all. Pip fluttered onto a nearby post and looked around in wonder. A little creature toddled up to greet them. It looked like a koala made of marshmallow, with a tiny bell tied around its neck and a hat shaped like a blueberry muffin. It blinked up at Tilly with kind, sleepy eyes and gave a little bow. "Welcome to Naberry Village," it said without speaking, its thoughts drifting into Tilly's mind like a warm breeze through curtains. "We've been waiting for you." Tilly gave a gentle moo, the kind that meant I'm very happy to be here. The koala creature smiled and motioned for her to follow. As Tilly walked through the village, she noticed how every step felt like walking on soft socks. The cloud streets puffed under her hooves, and the air was filled with the scent of baked peaches and blooming moonflowers. Everywhere she looked, creatures were doing the coziest things. One bunny was curled up in a hammock made of spider silk, reading a book that glowed faintly with each page turned. A sleepy mole was rocking slowly in a chair that played soft music as it moved. Tiny birds fluttered from rooftop to rooftop, delivering tiny bundles wrapped in ribbon, dream parcels, the koala explained, filled with good thoughts and kind wishes. At the center of the village was a round square made of woven moss. In the middle stood a fountain, not one that sprayed or splashed, but one that bubbled like a kitten's purr. The water inside shimmered with soft colors, and around its base, little flowers opened and closed with every breath of wind. The koala led Tilly to the fountain and pointed to a bench made of curled leaves and dandelion fluff. "Please rest a while. The path is long." and the heart needs moments of stillness. Tilly lay down beside the bench, her legs folding beneath her, the ribbon around her neck, catching the golden light. Pip landed on the edge of the fountain and dipped his beak into the shimmering water. He gave a tiny, satisfied chirp. The glowing petal hovered above the fountain for a moment, then slowly floated down to rest on the surface of the water. It spun in place, sending out little ripples that rang like soft bells. Tilly watched it for a long moment, her breath slowing into a gentle rhythm. Then, beside her, the koala sat down and pulled out a small pouch woven from moongrass. From it, they took out something very special, a tiny crystal shaped like a teardrop, glowing gently with the same Cloverlight shimmer. "This is a dream drop," the koala said, placing it gently between Tilly's hooves. "It holds one quiet wish from the heart of the village. Every traveler on the Cloverlight path carries one." Tilly looked at the dream drop and felt her chest swell with something soft and round and good. She didn't know exactly what the wish inside it was, but she could feel it, like a hug that had turned into light. She nudged the drop gently, and it floated up, spinning above her nose before settling into the folds of her ribbon, where it glowed softly, like it had found its home. The koala stood and gave a tiny bow. "When you are ready, the path will know." Then they toddled off, their little bell jingling softly, off to deliver more dream parcels and soft wishes. Tilly rested for a little while longer. The fountain bubbled, the clouds drifted lazily overhead, and the gentle sounds of the village lulled her into a quiet, dreamy place. Pip leaned against her side, feathers warm and still, and the glowing petal, always just nearby, hovered once more, waiting, not rushing, just waiting, because in Napbury Village and all along the Cloverlight path there was always time for rest, always time for softness, always time for dreams. The quiet hum of Napbury Village wrapped around Tilly like a blanket made of clouds. The gentle bubbling of the fountain, the tiny jingles of dream parcels being delivered, and the faraway purr of a breeze through the sky houses all blended together into a soft, sleepy song. Tilly lay still beside the fountain, her breath rising and falling like the petals of a flower in the sun. The dream drop nestled in her ribbon glowed faintly, as if it were gently breathing with her. Pip nuzzled against her neck, his feathers puffed up just right, his eyes closed in the middle of a very nice nap. The glowing petal hovered patiently at the edge of the fountain, swaying in small, lazy circles. It didn't rush. It simply waited, glowing quietly with the same warm calm that filled the whole village. When Tilly finally opened her eyes again, the sky above had changed just a little. It was still soft and golden, but now tiny streaks of lavender and rose stretched across the clouds, like the sky was beginning to yawn its way toward evening. Tilly stood slowly, careful not to jostle the dream drop or the velvet book still resting on her back. Pip opened one eye, then two, and gave a tiny hoot that meant "I'm ready if you are." The glowing petal bobbed once and began to float away from the fountain, winding slowly around the square. Tilly followed, her hooves making the gentlest puffs on the cloud-soft ground. As they moved through the village, the sleepy creatures waved to her with slow, kind smiles. A bunny offered her a tiny cookie shaped like a moon. A kitten with fuzzy socks handed Pip a warm puffball that smelled like sugar and cinnamon. A fox in a teacup hat blew her a kiss made of sparkles. Tilly felt her heart glow. The petal led them to the far edge of the village, where a little archway made of dreamwood trees stood quietly. Their trunks were pale and smooth, their leaves shaped like stars, and each one shimmered with a different color of the sky. A soft breeze passed through the arch, and the leaves tinkled like tiny chimes made of light. Pip fluttered onto one of the branches and looked down at Tilly. She gave a soft moo that meant yes. "I think we're ready." The petal floated through the archway, and as Tilly stepped beneath it, the sky seemed to shift again. This time it wasn't quite day. But it wasn't night either. It was the in-between, that gentle, magical moment when the light becomes quieter and the shadows grow longer and even the stars begin to stretch and blink their sleepy eyes. The path beyond the archway was made of stardust, soft, slow stardust packed into a trail that shimmered with every step. It felt cool under her hooves, and it sparkled in waves like it was remembering every footstep ever taken across it. As they walked, the world grew quieter still. The trees that lined the stardust path were tall and elegant, with trunks that glowed faintly and leaves that turned with the light. Every so often, a leaf would drift down and land with a soft shimmer, disappearing into a twinkle before it touched the ground. The path curved gently, never sharp, never steep, always soft and winding. Then, just as Tilly was beginning to wonder where they were going next, the trees opened up to a wide, open glade, and in the center of the glade was a tree. Not just any tree. It was the wishing tree. Tilly knew it, even though she'd never seen it before. Her heart told her so. The wishing tree was tall and wide, with branches that curled and looped like lullabies. Its bark was smooth and silver, and its leaves were shaped like hearts. Hanging from its branches were little lanterns, tiny glass globes that glowed in soft colors, each one swaying gently in the breeze. The glowing petal floated up to the tree and circled it once, twice, then settled on a branch near the middle. Tilly stepped into the glade, her eyes wide with wonder. Pip let out a breathy hoot and nestled against her neck. As she approached the tree, one of the lanterns blinked softly and floated down to meet her. It hovered in front of her for a moment, then opened like a flower. Inside was a tiny scroll, tied with a ribbon made of moon thread. Tilly gently nudged it open with her nose. The scroll didn't have words written in ink. It had wishes written in light. And the one she saw was this: "May all who walk with gentle hearts find places that glow." The scroll shimmered, then floated up and tucked itself back into the lantern, which returned to its branch with a sigh. More lanterns blinked and swayed. Each one held a wish: old wishes, new wishes, sleepy wishes, soft ones, kind ones. Tilly walked slowly around the tree, letting the glow of the lanterns wrap around her like a hug. She felt whispers in her ears, not scary or loud, just tiny feelings, like someone gently placing a warm hand over your heart. Then, from the base of the tree, a soft hum began. It rippled up through the trunk, through the branches, through the lanterns until the whole tree was humming a lullaby made of wishes. Tilly lay down beneath it, right in the center of the glade. Pip curled up beside her. The dream drop glowed against her ribbon. The lanterns swayed above, and the tree hummed on. It was a song with no beginning and no end. A song that said, "You are safe. You are soft. You are seen. You are loved." Tilly closed her eyes, not to sleep, just to listen, for in the hush of the glade, beneath the wishing tree, all things were gentle. All things were kind. And in that moment, there was nothing else she needed. The wishing tree sang on, its lullaby folding through the glade like a whisper tucked under a blanket. The lanterns above swayed gently, glowing in soft pulses, and the silver leaves rustled in a rhythm that felt just like breathing. Tilly lay in the clovery grass beneath the tree, the dream drop glowing gently against her ribbon, and Pip nestled in the curve of her neck, his feathers still and warm. The world was quiet here, not empty, not silent, just full of hush. Tilly blinked slowly and looked up at the lanterns. One floated lower, spinning slowly as if it were thinking. Inside, a soft blue light glowed, and as it turned, it gently opened once more. This time, no scroll floated out. Instead, a sound came, a voice made of echo and glow, not loud, not sharp, but gentle and round like a cloud. It said, "You are a gentle wanderer, a heart that listens, a soul that glows. The path is long, but always soft. Where kindness walks, the clover grows." The words wrapped around Tilly like a scarf. She didn't understand all of them, not in the way you understand a story with a start and an end, but she felt them, like warm grass, like the sound of someone humming while they watch over you. The glowing petal floated down from its branch and twirled once over her head. It hovered for a moment, then slowly began to drift away from the tree, following a trail of tiny glimmers that sparkled on the ground like crumbs made of moonlight. Tilly stood up slowly, careful not to disturb Pip, who fluttered and blinked sleepily as she moved. He gave a tiny chirp that meant I'm still with you, even if I'm a little bit sleepy. She gave a soft moo, the kind that meant I know, and I'm glad. The petal floated on, and Tilly followed. As she left the wishing tree behind, the glade began to change. The silver grass turned to soft moss again, and the lanterns in the branches above became smaller and dimmer, until they were just little sparkles in the trees, like leftover dreams caught in the leaves. The trail of moonlight crumbs led to a small path tucked between two trees shaped like sleepy giraffes. Their long necks arched together above the trail, forming a gentle archway, and when Tilly stepped beneath it, she felt a breeze kiss her cheeks. This path was new. It was soft and winding, like the others, but the air here was cooler, and little snowflakes, just the tiniest ones, drifted lazily from the sky, but they weren't cold. They didn't melt or sting or make the ground slippery. These were dream snowflakes, gentle, slow, and glowing faintly like they had been made from frozen lullabies. Pip fluttered up to catch one on his beak. It sat there for a breath, then floated away again, twinkling as it went. Tilly's hooves made the faintest crunch-crunch noises on the soft snow dust, like someone walking through a story they'd only just started to remember. The trees here were tall and quiet, their trunks wrapped in scarves of ivy and soft string lights that blinked slowly, like they were yawning. Every now and then, a sleepy squirrel peeked from a hole in the bark, blinked once, and tucked itself back into its mossy bed. The glowing petal floated ahead, moving slower now, as if the path itself were asking them to take their time. And then, up ahead, the trees opened once more, this time to a gentle grove full of mirrors, but not the kind you see in bathrooms or shops. These were soft mirrors, dream mirrors. Their frames were made of twisted vines and peppermint bark. Their glass shimmered like puddles after rain, and they didn't show exactly what was in front of them. They showed feelings. One mirror showed a picture of Tilly standing beneath the wishing tree, with Pip on her back and the petal above. But in the reflection, the silver glow around them pulsed like a heartbeat of joy. Another mirror showed Tilly as a tiny calf, curled beside her mother in a patch of clover, the stars above twinkling like lullabies. The feeling in that mirror was the warmest she had ever known. Safe, whole, and wrapped in love. A third mirror didn't show her at all, but instead showed someone else. A sleepy creature far away, whose eyes were closed and whose dream glow pulsed gently in rhythm with hers. Tilly blinked slowly. The mirrors didn't speak, but they had voices made of feeling, of hush, of gentleness. They were dream mirrors after all, and dreams don't always use words. The glowing petal floated to the center of the grove and paused in front of the largest mirror, which was shaped like a crescent moon. Tilly stepped close, and the mirror shimmered. This time, it didn't show her past or her path. It showed a door, a round, wooden door made of honeywood and velvet vines, with a tiny heart carved in the center. Behind the door, something glowed. Something soft, something waiting. The mirror pulsed once. Then the door in the reflection began to open. Tilly blinked, and when she looked around, she saw it. Not in the mirror, but right there, just behind a curtain of ivy, tucked into the roots of a tree, shaped like a curled-up cat. The door. She stepped toward it, the dream drop at her ribbon, glowing brighter now, like it knew this place too. Pip fluttered beside her, his feathers fluffed, his eyes wide and kind. Together, they reached the door, and in the hush of the grove, with the mirrors behind them and the soft snowflakes still drifting down, Tilly gently pressed her nose to the heart-shaped carving. The door opened with a sigh. Not a creak, not a groan, just a sigh, like a book letting go of a wonderful secret. The door opened softly, like a yawn at bedtime, and the air that drifted out was warm and sweet. It smelled like cinnamon, milk, vanilla fluff, and the quiet kind of joy that comes from being exactly where you are meant to be. Tilly stepped through the little wooden doorway, ducking her head just a bit so her ribbon, her dream drop, and her velvet book wouldn't brush the heart-shaped frame. Pip fluttered in beside her, landing on her back with a soft hoot that meant, ooh, it's even cozier in here. Inside, the space was round and glowing like the inside of a music box. The walls were made of smooth wood that shimmered with swirls of gold and silver, and the ceiling was shaped like a dome with tiny stars tucked into its curves. Some twinkled slowly, Others blinked as if they were sleepy eyes. At the center of the room was a nest. A great big one made of soft things, cloud threads, moss blankets, and flower petals that looked like they'd been collected from 100 dreams. It was the kind of nest that made you want to curl up without thinking, the kind that whispered, "Come rest," if only for a little while. Tilly walked to it slowly, her hooves making the faintest pat-pat sound on the velvet floor. The glowing petal floated in behind her and settled gently onto a little pile of star-shaped cushions. Pip hopped down and began to nuzzle into the fluffiest part of the nest, flapping once before tucking his wings in tight. Tilly looked around. There were shelves here, gentle little shelves tucked into the curved walls, and each one held something lovely. A bell made of a snowflake, a feather painted with moonlight, a tiny jar full of dream giggles that shimmered when the room was quiet. There was even a pair of knitted socks for a mouse, with a tag that read for cold paws on cloudy days. Tilly felt something tug gently in her chest. Not a sad tug, a warm one, like someone saying softly, "You are welcome here." She curled into the nest, folding her legs beneath her as the dream drop glowed softly against her ribbon. The velvet book slid from her back and landed beside her with a hush, the cover shimmering like a puddle of starlight. The book opened itself again. Its pages turned slowly, as if the wind from a dream had reached down to help. This time, the picture it showed was of the very room they were in. The nest, the shelves, the stars on the ceiling. But in the picture, the nest was glowing, and above it floated dozens of petals, just like the glowing one that had led her here. The vines of writing beneath the picture began to swirl and shape into words, not spoken aloud, but felt like soft thoughts placed gently in the heart. When a gentle soul finds the nest of knowing, the world lets out a sigh, not because it's ending, but because it's resting too. Here, the path pauses. Here, the heart listens. Here, the story remembers itself. Tilly's eyes blinked slower now. The stars above her blinked too. The glowing petal gave a little spin, like a dancer finishing a quiet song. Then the room began to hum, not loudly, but gently, like a lullaby being played on a ribbon stretched between clouds. The hum filled the nest, the book, the shelves, and the sleepy air. Tilly felt her breathing slow. In, out, in, out. Each breath was like a wave on a still lake. Pip leaned against her chest, his tiny feathers rising and falling with her rhythm. The velvet book closed with a soft shh. The dream drop pulsed gently, like a heartbeat made of starlight, and the glowing petal floated to the ceiling, joining the tiny stars, where it spun slowly, casting a gentle light over them all. Tilly didn't speak. There was no need. Everything she needed to say was already being said by the softness around her. The nest sighed and curled around her like a hug. Outside, the snowflakes still drifted, slow and quiet, landing on the branches above the door. Inside, the hush deepened, like the world was tucking in, pulling up its covers, and closing its eyes. And in the nest of knowing, where wishes rested and dreams breathed, Tilly felt something deep and steady rise in her heart. Not excitement, not surprise, but peace. She didn't know what would come next on the Cloverlight path. but she knew with her whole soft heart that whatever it was, it would be gentle. And when she was ready, the path would wait. For now she closed her eyes and listened to the hush, to the stars, to the soft voice of the nest saying, "You are loved, you are light, you are exactly where you should be." Tilly slept deeply in the nest of knowing, wrapped in the hush of the glowing room. The stars on the ceiling blinked slowly above her like quiet eyes, watching kindly over the world. The nest held her gently, as if it had been made just for her, shaped from every soft moment she'd ever known. Outside, the snowflakes drifted on. Inside, the ribbon at her neck glowed faintly, its dream drop warming like a lantern in a cozy window. Pip snored softly, a tiny puff of sound with each breath, nestled in the crook of her foreleg. His feathers rose and fell in time with her own steady breathing. Time didn't move quickly here. It moved like a lullaby. When Tilly's eyes fluttered open at last, the room hadn't changed, but it felt more awake. The stars were a little brighter. The scent in the air had turned sweeter, more like honey tea and vanilla dreams. The glowing petal had returned from the ceiling, now drifting slowly above her like a leaf on invisible waters. She stretched slowly. First her legs, then her back, then her tail. Pip stirred and gave a soft flutter as he blinked awake. The velvet book opened again, just a little, and a new page turned. There was no rush, no command, just a gentle invitation. The picture on this page showed a field of deep blue grass under a sky where clouds curled and floated like soft sheep. In the middle of the field stood a tree, not tall or wide, but shaped like a spiral, with leaves that looked like crystals and a trunk that glowed from within. There were no words this time, just the feeling of next. Tilly nodded softly. The book closed itself once more, and the dream drop pulsed in agreement. The glowing petal floated toward the door and paused there, hovering patiently. Tilly stood, shaking the nest fluff from her fur, and turned to nuzzle Pip gently awake. He blinked, gave a tiny hoot that meant I had the nicest dream, and hopped onto her back. Together, they stepped out into the snow-lit forest, where the path waited once more. But this time, it wasn't the stardust path or the mossy trail. It was a ribbon. A real ribbon, soft and wide, floating just above the ground, shimmering with every color you could dream of. It unrolled itself gently as they walked, laying itself out before them, curving ever so slightly, always forward, always soft. As they walked, the trees began to thin, their trunks growing paler, their leaves turning translucent like glass petals. The snowflakes changed to no longer round and puffy, but shaped like tiny stars, each one different, and each one glowing with its own little secret. Then, ahead, the landscape opened wide. The ribbon path led them to the edge of something vast and still. It was the dreaming field. Tilly knew it by the way her heart softened the moment she saw it. The field was covered in bluegrass that sparkled like velvet in the moonlight, and above it the sky shifted gently between dusk and dawn, never quite night and never quite morning. The clouds above curled like cream in warm milk, drifting slowly, full of hush and hum. In the distance, the spiral tree from the book stood quietly, its crystal leaves catching the skylight and turning it into soft glows that blinked like sleepy thoughts. The ribbon led them into the field where the grass brushed against Tilly's legs like kind little hands. Each blade gave off a faint chime as she passed, so quiet that it only made a sound when you listened with your heart. Pip looked up at the sky and gave a little hoot of wonder. The clouds were singing, not with voices, but with quiet warmth, the kind of music you feel in your chest when someone holds your hoof or wing just because. The glowing petal floated slowly now, twirling in wide lazy loops, like it too had become part of the dream. Tilly walked toward the spiral tree, her steps slow and steady. The grass parted gently with each hoof, and tiny sparkles rose up behind her, like she was leaving a trail of stardust footprints. As she reached the base of the tree, the breeze around her changed. It wasn't cold or fast. It was full of stories. They swirled around her like dandelion fluff, brushing her ears and tail and tickling her nose. The spiral tree pulsed once with light, and then its trunk opened, not like a door, more like a smile. Inside was a soft, glowing room with no walls and no roof. It was made of light and hush, and it smelled like memory and magic. Tilly stepped inside. The moment she did, lights rose from the ground, tiny, glowing orbs that floated around her in slow, sleepy circles. Each one showed a picture, not just of her journey, but of feelings. Her first step onto the mossy path. The moment she found the dream map. Pip's first sleepy flutter above the bubble pond. The humming wishing tree. The nest of knowing. Each memory glowed softly, then faded into sparkles. And then a new light rose. One she hadn't seen before. It showed her home, the Cloverlight meadow. The cows, curled up in their cozy circles. The willow tree with Pip's old perch. The stone well humming quietly in the moonlight. Tilly blinked slowly. She wasn't sad. She wasn't done, but she knew. The path was beginning to curl gently back toward where it had started, not to end, but to rest. The glowing petal floated in front of her and paused. It spun once, twice, then floated toward the opening in the tree. Outside, the ribbon path had returned. But now, it shimmered softer, slower. Like a lullaby slowing down, Tilly stepped outside, Pip on her back, both wrapped in the hush of the dreaming field. The spiral tree pulsed once more, then stilled. The sky above blinked with stars just beginning to yawn, and with a quiet sigh, the ribbon path began to roll again, this time gently leading them homeward. The ribbon path stretched gently beneath Tilly's hooves, curling back through the soft bluegrass of the dreaming field. The sky above had quieted into a soft blur of lavender and milk blue, a sky that didn't hurry or shine too brightly, just enough to glow, just enough to soothe. Pip nestled close on her back, feathers fluffed against the cool hush of the air, his eyes blinking slowly, sleepily. The glowing petal floated ahead of them, drifting like a lullaby in the shape of light, its glow softer now, as if it too was beginning to grow drowsy. Tilly walked slowly. The ribbon beneath her hooves shimmered with each step, not to show the way, but to remember it. Behind her, the ribbon rolled itself back up, tucking the journey gently away like a bedtime story that would be reread tomorrow. They passed between two trees shaped like open books. Their branches curled as if reading the stars. Little lights flickered in the leaves, perhaps thoughts, perhaps dreams, perhaps both. And then the air changed. It grew warmer, deeper, quieter, like the very world was wrapping itself in a cloak made of shadow and gold. The path widened into a small, round clearing filled with soft mounds of earth that looked like pillows and tall, swaying flowers that glowed with a sleepy pink light. The clearing was shaped like a circle, and in the very center of it stood a tall, slow-turning windmill. But not the kind that spins fast and makes busy sounds. No, this windmill turned like a sigh, each blade carved from driftwood and moonlight, creaking ever so gently as it moved, like it was telling long-forgotten stories to the breeze. The ribbon stopped here, not sharply, just paused. Tilly stepped off it, the grass beneath her hooves cool and soft. The windmill gave a low, breathy groan, the kind that made you want to stretch and yawn. Peep fluttered up to one of the flower tops and blinked at the windmill. Tilly looked up too. There was a door at its base, round and low, woven from reeds and clover stems. It opened with a hush. Inside, it was dim and warm. The walls were lined with shelves, and the shelves were full of jars. Not ordinary jars, but tall, round dream jars, each glowing faintly, each humming a different note. Some were full of colors. Others were full of shapes. One jar seemed to hold the giggle of a baby fox. Another had the smell of warm bread and blueberry breeze. A small creature waddled out from the shadows. It looked like a hedgehog made of velvet, with tiny round glasses perched on the end of its nose, and a scarf wrapped 3 times around its middle. It gave a polite little snuffle and blinked up at Tilly with eyes full of kindness. Tilly gave a moo, gentle and low, that meant hello, we are just passing through. The hedgehog bowed slightly and motioned toward the shelves. Here, it said without speaking, we keep the dreams that are almost too soft to keep, the ones that float away unless someone gently catches them. Tilly stepped inside, her ribbon trailing behind her, her dream drop pulsing softly with each breath. The hedgehog led her to a little nook where a new jar sat empty, waiting. This one is yours, the hedgehog said gently. If you'd like. Tilly blinked slowly. The jar lit up as she stepped close, and inside, swirls of light began to gather. Images, feelings, moments. The glowing petal floating through the clover. The bubble pond singing softly. The wishing tree humming her name. The spiral tree in the dreaming field. The nest. The hush. The kindness. All of it swirled together into a soft, glowing dance inside the jar. When the light stilled, the jar sealed itself with a faint click, and a small label appeared across the glass, one gentle journey. Pip gave a sleepy hoot and fluttered back to her, landing on her back once more. The hedgehog took the jar carefully and placed it on the shelf, right between a jar labeled First Snowfall Nap and another called The Sound of a Cloud Laughing. The windmill creaked again outside. The petal floated to the doorway. It was time. Tilly gave a soft nod to the hedgehog, who bowed in return and whispered a thought. The journey changes you, but only into more of what you already are. Back outside, the ribbon had curled into a final loop, ready to lead her onward once more. The petal hovered above it, spinning slowly. The windmill turned behind them, groaning gently in the breeze. As Tilly stepped onto the ribbon again, the world around her began to dim. Not darker, just softer. The sky was now a sleepy blue-purple, with the first stars beginning to peek out from their hiding places. The ribbon path stretched on, curling gently downward. And as they followed it, the air began to smell familiar. The grass felt familiar. The quiet hum of the earth felt like home. Tilly took a deep breath. She didn't need to rush. She didn't need to guess what came next. She just had to walk, one soft step at a time. And so she did, with Pip nestled close, the petal floating ahead, and the dream drop glowing at her ribboned neck. The stars blinked slowly. The clover waited somewhere near, and the ribbon rolled on. The ribbon path shimmered beneath Tilly's hooves as it gently unfurled across the quiet sky. It wasn't bright now. It glowed only faintly, like a candle on a windowsill, guiding her softly through the dusk. The world around her was sinking into a hush, the kind of hush that comes when the sun says goodbye and the stars begin to blink their first sleepy blinks. Above her, the sky was turning to velvet. The first stars sparkled gently, and the clouds drifted slower than before, as if they too were getting ready for bed. Some curled into soft shapes, pillows, blankets, and one that looked like a cow with wings floating peacefully through the darkening blue. Tilly walked slowly, each step quiet and calm. Pip was curled up on her back, feathers ruffled and soft, his head tucked beneath his wing. Every now and then he gave a tiny snore, just a little peep of sound that made Tilly smile inside. The glowing petal floated ahead, still leading the way, though now it dipped and twirled more slowly, as if it too was growing drowsy. The ribbon path curved downward, leading her past gentle hills made of soft moss, where tiny lights blinked up from the grass like sleepy lightning bugs. The air smelled of clover and warm milk, and every so often the breeze would whisper past her ears, telling her things she already knew but loved to hear again. You are safe. You are soft. You are loved. Tilly's heart felt full and still. Then, just ahead, the ribbon path reached the edge of a familiar hill. It was the hill just outside the Cloverlight meadow. Tilly paused at the top, her hooves sinking gently into the moss. She looked down and saw it, all of it. The glowing clover, the willow tree, the cozy nests where the other cows curled up in sleepy circles. The old stone well stood still and quiet, touched by moonlight, its mossy stones blinking faintly with silver light. A breeze rolled up the hill and wrapped around her like a blanket. She had come home. But she was not the same. She was softer in places she hadn't known were hard, brighter in places she hadn't known were dim, fuller in places she hadn't known were waiting. Pip stirred and opened one sleepy eye. He blinked at the meadow, gave a soft hoot, and nestled back down with a sigh. The glowing petal floated down from the sky and settled gently on the tip of Tilly's nose. It twinkled once, then twice, and then, like a puff of starlight, it faded, its glow melting into the hush of the night. Tilly watched it go without sadness. It had guided her exactly where she needed to be, and now it could rest too. The ribbon path, having brought her home, began to roll itself up behind her, folding gently into sparkles that danced for a moment, then disappeared into the breeze. Tilly walked down the hill slowly, her hooves brushing through the clover that still shimmered with that quiet, magical light. The cows in the meadow turned their heads and blinked their big, sleepy eyes. One gave a soft moo that meant welcome back. We missed you. Tilly gave a gentle moo in return, the kind that meant I missed you too. And I brought something quiet and new. She wandered toward the willow tree, where a little hollow in the grass waited just for her, the nest she always loved, lined with soft clover and bits of moss. Familiar, safe, home. The velvet book slid from her back and settled beside her, its cover glowing one last time before it stilled. The dream drop nestled against her ribbon, warm and calm, and Pip, who had stayed awake just long enough to see the meadow again, gave one last sleepy hoot and tucked himself in tight, his wings curled like petals folding in the dark. The stars above the meadow blinked brighter now. The moon, round and golden, rose slowly over the trees, casting everything in a gentle glow. Tilly curled into her nest. She closed her eyes. In the distance, the well gave a faint hum, low and kind, like it was singing to the earth beneath, and the clover around her glowed in time with her breathing. In, out, in, out. Tilly sighed, a soft, warm sound, the kind that means everything is just as it should be. The journey had brought her far, but home had waited, sweet and quiet, with arms made of grass and stars. And as she drifted toward sleep, the meadow itself seemed to breathe with her, as if the whole world had settled down to dream along. The stars above Cloverlight Meadow twinkled in slow, sleepy rhythms, like tiny lullabies blinking across the sky. The moon, now high and full, cast a silver hush across the clover, where everything glowed just gently enough to feel like a dream you hadn't woken from. Tilly lay in her nest beneath the willow tree, her head resting on a cushion of moss and blossoms, her legs folded cozy beneath her. Pip was curled tightly on her back, his feathers fluffed, his dreams soft and warm. The velvet book rested beside them, its cover still and quiet, as if it, too, had found the perfect place to rest. The ribbon path had folded itself away. The glowing petal had returned to the stars. All was still. All was safe. But in the hush of the night, something new began to stir, not loud, not sudden, just a feeling, like a whisper brushing gently through the clover. It was the meadow itself. It was remembering the journey Tilly had taken. The cows began to settle deeper into their own nests, their tails curling around them like sleepy commas in a soft story. One by one, they began to hum, not with words, but with low, slow sounds that rose up from their bellies and drifted into the air. Hum, hummin'. The sound spread like warm tea spilled across a blanket, gentle, slow, and full of comfort. Tilly lifted her head slightly. The hum was familiar. It was the hum of the wishing tree, the hum of the bubble pond, the hum of the spiral tree in the dreaming field. It was the hum of the Cloverlight path. And now, the whole meadow was singing it with her. Not loudly, just enough. Tilly's ribbon glowed faintly. The dream drop shimmered once, like it was smiling, and above her, the stars began to fall, not fast, not bright, but like flower petals drifting down from a sky that had finally decided it was time to rest. Each star that fell landed softly in the meadow. One nestled into a cow's mane. One floated down into the well and vanished with a gentle sparkle. One came to rest right beside Pip's wing, and one, a very small, very soft star, landed on Tilly's nose and stayed there. Tilly blinked once. The star blinked back. Then, like a sigh, it melted into her fur and disappeared. The hum grew softer. The star stopped falling. The breeze slowed to a whisper, and the clover around her, glowing ever so faintly, began to fade into stillness. Tilly closed her eyes again, this time not just to rest but to sleep. The deep kind, the full kind, the kind that comes only when everything around you is exactly where it should be. She dreamed of spiral trees and glowing petals, of bubbles that sang and maps that shimmered, of stars that whispered and windmills that creaked. She dreamed of the path, not as something to follow, but as something inside her now, a gentle rhythm, a soft light, a quiet song, and the path dreamed of her too. For once a wanderer walks the Cloverlight path with a kind heart and soft steps. The path remembers them forever, even when they sleep, even when they grow, even when they return home. Tilly's breathing slowed. The willow leaves rustled gently above her, and the velvet book, resting beside her nest, opened one last time, just one page, just one sentence, written in glowing letters that faded as they were read. Thank you for walking gently. The wind curled through the meadow and carried the words up, up, up into the stars. And then all was still. The clover stopped glowing. The moon tucked behind a cloud, and the last hum of the night melted into the hush of dreams. Night had wrapped Cloverlight Meadow in its softest blanket. The stars above drifted behind veils of cloud, their glow now gentle enough to rest. The moon, once high and round like a lantern in the sky, had lowered just a little, casting silver kisses on the tops of the willow branches. Tilly lay curled in her nest, the rhythm of her breathing matching the quiet hush of the earth beneath her. Pip was a warm weight on her back, his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect time. Around them, the clover no longer glowed. It simply was, soft and still and full of dreams. The velvet book beside them gave one last shimmer, then quietly closed itself forever, not with a snap, but with a whisper, like a page turning in a story you already know by heart. From the heart of the meadow, where the old stone well stood nestled in moss, a breeze rose. It moved slowly, as though remembering the shape of every leaf, every stone, every sleepy hoofstep. It carried the scent of clover and distant stars, and with it, something small, a final petal. It wasn't glowing, not anymore. It was quiet now, pale and soft, like a memory. The petal drifted through the meadow, weaving between the curled-up cows, brushing the tops of their ears and the tips of their noses. None stirred. They were deep in dreams, warm in the hush of night. The petal reached the willow tree. It floated down and landed beside Tilly's nose. She didn't wake, but she smiled, just a little, because even in sleep she felt it. The last gift of the path, the final hush. The petal rested there for a moment longer, then caught the breeze again and drifted up into the sky. Higher, lighter, slower. until it was no longer a petal at all, but a shimmer among the stars. And far below, in the softest part of the world, Tilly dreamed. She dreamed of bubble ponds and star mirrors, of windmills that turned with lullabies and trees that sang her name. She dreamed of being wrapped in moss and clover, warm and still, as the world turned gently beneath her. The dream drop on her ribbon glowed once more, then dimmed to a soft warmth, no longer guiding, just being. The ribbon itself, now faded and quiet, rested beneath her chin like a thread of moonlight spun into silk. And Pip dreamed too, of feathers in the breeze, and nests in the sky, and a cow with kind eyes who had followed the hush all the way home. The meadow breathed. The stars watched, and time slowed. Not stopped, just slowed, like a song lingering on its last note. And in that stillness, the Cloverlight path curled quietly around the heart of the world and disappeared. Not gone, just resting, waiting for the next quiet hoofstep, for the next kind heart, for the next dreamer who dares to follow a petal. And as the last light of the night flickered in the clover, the hush deepened, the breeze stilled, and sleep, soft as silk, settled over everything.